France once looked unshakable. Golden palaces, powerful kings, an image of order that had lasted for centuries. But beneath the marble floors and silk curtains, something dangerous was growing. Anger, hunger, and the feeling that life was unfair and always would be. In 1789, that pressure exploded. Ordinary people challenged an ancient system and proved something terrifying to every ruler in Europe. Power could change hands. But how did one of the strongest monarchies in the world lose control to its own people? To understand that, we must first look at how France was built to fail. French society was divided into rigid layers. At the top were the clergy and the nobility. They owned land. They held power. They paid little or no taxes. Below them was everyone else: farmers, workers, merchants, families struggling to survive. They worked the hardest. They paid the most. And they had almost no voice. This system had existed for generations. People were born into their place and expected to stay there. But patience has limits, and when pressure builds long enough, even the strongest walls begin to crack. Those cracks widened when France's economy started to collapse. France was broke. Years of expensive wars had drained the treasury. Poor harvests ruined food supplies. Bread, the basic food of survival, became painfully expensive. Families spent most of their income just to eat. Some couldn't afford bread at all. Meanwhile, the royal court lived in luxury. Feasts continued. Fashion thrived. Money was spent like the crisis didn't exist. For the people, this contrast felt like an insult. Hunger turns frustration into anger. And anger, when ignored, turns into rebellion. But hunger alone doesn't start a revolution. Ideas do. New ideas were spreading quietly. Ideas that questioned kings. Ideas that challenged tradition. Ideas that said power should come from the people, not birth. People began to talk about equality, about rights, about freedom. These ideas didn't immediately overthrow the monarchy, but they planted a dangerous thought. What if the system wasn't natural? What if it could be changed? Once people imagine a different future, the old one becomes harder to accept. And in 1789, imagination collided with reality. Facing financial disaster, the king called a national meeting. It was meant to fix the economy. Instead, it exposed inequality. Representatives of the common people realized how little power they truly had. They refused to stay silent. They declared themselves the true voice of the nation. This was more than protest. It was a direct challenge to royal authority. Tension filled the streets of Paris. Rumors spread. Fear grew. Crowds gathered. And then, everything snapped. The revolution found its symbol in stone and iron. On July 14th, 1789, a crowd marched toward a fortress, the Bastille. It wasn't just a prison, it was a symbol of absolute power, of arbitrary punishment, of fear. The crowd attacked. After hours of chaos, the Bastille fell. The fortress was taken by the people. News spread across France like wildfire. If the Bastille could fall, then nothing was untouchable. But victory opened the door to something far more dangerous. The uprising didn't stop in Paris. Peasants rose against landowners. Noble estates were attacked. Old privileges were abolished. For the first time, the idea of citizenship mattered more than birth. Laws were rewritten. Rights were declared. The old order began to collapse. Hope filled the air. But revolutions don't move in straight lines. They move in waves. And the next wave was darker, because fear soon replaced hope. France was surrounded by enemies. Foreign monarchies feared the revolution would spread. Inside the country, leaders suspected betrayal everywhere. Fear took control. The government began arresting anyone considered a threat. Trials were rushed. Evidence was thin. Executions were swift. Even the king was executed. The revolution started killing its own leaders. This period became known as the Reign of Terror. Thousands died in the name of protecting freedom. The dream of equality was now soaked in blood. And the world learned a brutal lesson about power. When old systems collapse quickly, chaos follows. Without strong institutions, fear fills the gap. Those who promise safety gain control. Violence becomes a tool of order. The French Revolution showed that overthrowing power is easier than rebuilding it. Good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes, and revolutions often demand more than their creators expect. Eventually, exhaustion sets in, and someone always steps forward. After years of chaos, France wanted stability. Out of the turmoil rose a military leader, strong, popular, decisive. He ended the revolution, but kept many of its changes. Feudalism was gone. Equality before the law remained. The old monarchy never fully returned. France was no longer ruled by tradition alone. The revolution was over, but its ideas were just beginning to travel, and their impact would reach far beyond France. The French Revolution changed history. It proved that kings could fall, that people could take power, that authority could come from the masses. Modern democracy, nationalism, and political movements all carry its fingerprints. It inspired hope, it inspired fear, and it reshaped how the world understood power. Once people realized they could challenge rulers, they never forgot it. The French Revolution began with hunger and hope. It ended with blood and change. But its most powerful legacy wasn't violence. It was an idea that ordinary people could shape history, and once that idea exists, it can never be fully erased.